Okay, great. So today, what can I say? I get excited every time we start a new episode, but today is really fun. Today, I have two old friends technically on this podcast. Our guest today is none other than Glenn Scarpelli, who played Alex on One Day at a Time and has a wonderful career. I cannot wait to talk to him. And of course, my co-host is voiceover extraordinaire and the voice of Porky Pig and about a billion other characters, Bob Bergen. So glad to have you on. And Glenn, thank you so much for being here with us.
I'm so thrilled we finally made this happen. I'm so sorry it took so long, but here we are finally together. Wonderful to be with you, gentlemen.
Yeah, well, thanks. It has been. It has been, but we appreciate your time. Right away out of the gates, I had on the top of my mind, what did you audition for One Day at a Time? Because that's one thing. I did a lot of research, but I was like, I don't know. I didn't really catch that.
Yes, I auditioned for One Day at a Time. Actually, so here's the story, and I'll give you the abridged version because it's a bit of a long story. But I was doing Richard III on Broadway with Al Pacino when I was
Wait,
12.
whoa. We don't just brush over that.
Don't go abridged when you say Pacino.
With Al Pacino.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
That was
we're
a
going to
great
put that
opening.
over here on the shelf, and we're going to get back to that because that's not just a quickie. All right. So Al Pacino, continue with One Day at a Time.
So you've heard of him?
I heard he's a little guy, but he's done some good work. There's a future.
He's got potential.
Yeah.
So so basically I was doing that, and I had known Valerie around that time. I had done a pilot with her boyfriend at the time, Scott Columby, and Val was going to New York to do the $20,000 pyramid, I want to say. Maybe it was 25,000 at the time. I'm not sure. It's gone up to 100,000, which my boyfriend Johnny is one of the producers on that show.
Yeah. Nice
now.
pitch.
So
nice pitch.
there you go. But there was another pyramid connection. So she came to New York. They got tickets to the show. I introduced her to Pacino backstage.
Oh, wow.
And which I didn't do for very many people, but I thought it was cool to want to go, Val, Al, Val. I thought that was,
God.
I thought that was cool for a 12-year-old. And she walked we were walking out of the stage door, and she said, Glenn, if there's anything I could ever do for you, you just ask, you just let me know. So cut to 2 years later, we're reading in TV Guide. My mom actually read the article. Mackenzie was being, of course, fired due to her very public drug addiction. Right. And they were bringing on a 14-year-old boy. And I was like, oh my God, Valerie Bertinelli owed me one. I made a mental note. So wow. I tracked her down. She was doing a TV movie in San Francisco where she played a nun. And I tracked her down on the set, and she was like, oh my gosh, Glenn, I was just talking to Bonnie, and she wants someone with theater credits. And Bonnie, of course, Bonnie Franklin had casting approval on the show at the time.
Yeah.
And she said, you'd be perfect. I'm totally going to recommend you. So she recommended me. The producers of the show, the casting director, came out to New York. I was living in New York at the time. They came out to New York to read me, but it was a very informal reading. It was during the actor strike of 1980. So they technically weren't allowed to audition. So it was more of a meet and greet at the Plaza Hotel kind of thing. Eve Brandstein was our casting director at the time. And
I knew Eve very well. She was terrific.
She was so great, yes, and Mark Hirschfeld, and that whole team was.
Mark is on the board of governors with me at the TV Academy now, and I'll get back to Mark in a second. But did you do One Day at a Time at Universal?
We started at Metro Media Square,
right,
back when there was a Metro Media Square.
Right.
It became Fox, right?
Right.
It's now a big football field.
Yeah, exactly.
But I thought like right after that it became like Fox Center, or was it Fox Center before?
It was KTTV, and then it went bye-bye, and all those embassy shows went to Universal.
Then we moved to Universal, yes.
I know this stuff, Glenn, because I was a tour guide at Universal during the time that you were doing One Day at a Time. But we'll continue with you.
Oh my God! I hope
a lot of overlap here.
I hope I was nice and I waved. I know we're going off into 10,000.
We'll talk.
Yes.
I'll give you all the dirt. I'll give you all the embassy dirt.
I waved. Oh my God.
We were told to wave when we moved there. That was part of our contract.
I know.
We had to be nice to the tourists.
Some waved, some ran into their honey wagon. I'll give you the dirt.
Okay, good.
That had to be
So
so
anyway,
hard for you, Glenn, to be like open and kind and wave to people. I'm so shocked. So
I
shocked.
know, I know. I
Yeah.
have to come out of my shell one of these days, John. I'm working on it, buddy. I'm working on it. But so anyway, so Valerie recommended me. We had this little meet and greet thing. And then when the strike was over, they literally flew us out that day. It was like a Wednesday. I auditioned on a Thursday for Valerie was there. I don't believe Harrington was there, but Bonnie was definitely there. The executive producers, they recorded it. The network was there, but they also recorded it to show Norman Lear, who at that point was the chairman of the board. He wasn't actually the showrunner at the time. So Norman had to give his blessing, and I got the part that day.
Wow.
I literally,
Wow, that's very cool.
they by that night, they were like, you got the part. The next day I went to the set. I went to see the first taping like the week before I was on, just to meet everybody and see the routine and the deal. And it was so exciting. And Monday morning I was on the set and I never looked back. I went to professional children's school on West 60th in New York as my high school, but I was only there 2 months. And then I got one day at a time, and I was on the back lot with a tutor until the day I graduated. So all 4 years.
Were you living at the Barham apartments that everybody lives in when they first come to LA?
Oakwood.
Yes.
Oakwood,
yes. I was there with Sarah Jessica Parker and
wow.
a whole bunch of other people. They were doing Square Pegs. I remember that show, Square Pegs.
I love
yeah.
Yes, so that was one of the things. But then I wanted to buy in a condo right next door to the Oakwood, Barham Court.
That's
so
what it was. Yeah.
Yes. So I lived there for a very long time. I lived there for many, many years. That I wish I never sold that place, actually.
Honestly,
what it could have shown. We all have that first piece of real estate. Cato had a place in Encino that right now he's going, I wish I had never sold that.
Oh, I wish I never let that go. Yeah.
I'm telling you, I hear you.
That was a big mistake. Well, tell me this. So when you entered, obviously, as you said, I mean, it's very public that Mackenzie Phillips had, drug issues at the time. So you go onto this set, and yes, I realize you know Val. I realize that they've welcomed you, but was there anything kind of bizarre about, like, hey, we just lost like one of the stars of the show, and now you're entering to kind of help us?
I was so welcomed. It was a very happy set. I think the Mackenzie stress being alleviated was actually good for everybody at that time, including Mackenzie. She'll be the first to admit it. I mean, Mac is one of my dearest friends in the whole world.
Yeah.
She did come back to the show eventually, and we became lifelong friends, mostly since she got sober as an adult. I always hung in there. I always reached out to her, but I knew that she had been challenged for decades, literally. I mean, if you would have told me then that in 2022, Norman Lear and Mackenzie Phillips are still alive, and Bonnie Franklin and Pat Harrington are gone, I would have never believed you.
No, of course not. Of course not. Wow.
So she was very challenged. So I think there was a sense of relief a little bit. Everybody didn't have that storyline, that narrative about Mackenzie and her drugs as part of their daily routine. So it was a very happy, wonderful time. Then Matt came back, and it was also great to meet her and be close to her, and to watch the cast welcome her back and just loving on her. So, it was a very happy time. We had the greatest time. I mean, it was the greatest job in the world. I mean, Michael Lembeck from the show, he and I talk about this all the time, that you go to work, it was very reasonable hours. I think they started rehearsals at 10. We were usually done by 4:30, and we laughed from the moment we got there to the moment we left. Like, I worked with some of the funniest people in show business. Pat Harrington, Nanette Fabre was on the set very often. She was freaking hilarious. Like, we laughed all day, and it was a joyous, wonderful chapter. Like, and these people protected me as a child. Like, I you hear stories about child stars or child actors that didn't have a good experience. I had I won the lottery. Really, I have no complaints. I have no resentment. Like, I did what I wanted to do. It was my dream to be an actor early on.
How many seasons did you do?
Go ahead, Bob.
How many seasons did you do?
I did I believe it was 3 full seasons. I think I did like 70 episodes out of the 200. So, or something like that, 68 episodes. Wikipedia will tell us.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it was season 6, 7, and 8, and it went on 9 seasons. The final season, I actually, because I knew it was going to be the final season, I was offered a show on NBC with Anne Gillian called Jennifer Slept Here.
Oh, yeah.
And I took that only because it had the potential to go on. It didn't go on, but you know, I had to take the shot at that point.
Good
I
cast,
think anybody
though.
else.
Yeah,
Great
but
cast.
was that
Georgia Engel and
yeah,
Anne
oh yeah.
Gillian? Wow.
Cato does his research.
I did.
Yes,
I
he
do.
does.
So was that about the same time you did fantasy?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when I left CBS, I moved to NBC, and it was kind of more of an NBC deal that I had. So they put me daytime fantasy with Peter Marshall and Leslie Uggams for the whole summer, because they were really, John Stamos was on General Hospital at the time, and we were against General Hospital. So they certainly wanted to bring in a younger audience specifically for the summer when the kids are off from school. So they brought me on the show. I did 4 months of fantasy, one of the greatest jobs of my life. We had so much fun. Wow. Johnny and I just a couple of weeks ago had dinner with Leslie in New York.
Oh, very cool.
It was so great. You know, I've stayed very close with her. And we actually
I think I told you that I had written in, because my fantasy was to meet Mel Blanc. And they were gonna do it, but the damn thing got canceled. And I didn't meet him then. I met him later. But I was like, I mean, they were like, you know, they put you through the ringer and they question you and they interview you, and they had me go to NBC and meet with people, and they said, he's interested, it's going to happen. And then the show got canceled.
Oh, Bob, I never knew that. I never knew that all these years with Mel Blanc. Wow.
Bob, we could have met years. That could have been the beginning of our friendship.
And there you go. From there on, buddy.
I would have been like, who's the cute guy that just walked on the set?
There you go. He's not talking about me, John. It's okay.
Hey, Glenn,
he's not the jealous type. Don't worry.
So I got to ask you, when you were on the show, well, 2 things. One, and maybe I'm going overboard on this, but I swear to God, I kind of feel like you saved the series a little bit. I mean, I mean this sincerely, because you've got Bonnie Franklin with her Anne Romano character. The whole show was about, she's this mom, she's taking care of kids or whatever, but we were kind of going off the rails a little bit there at one point. And then I feel like you come in and now you're the kid. So she has someone to take care of, and we're back on track. I mean, did you feel that at all?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I really did. You know, you're right. You're right on there, John. Because, you know, when I came on, the storyline that introduced me was she was dating my dad on the show, Nick Handress. I played Alex Handress, and he was played by Ron Rifkin, the incredible actor.
Brilliant actor. Such a great actor.
So incredible, and I loved so much. But yet there was this sense of the audience really wasn't digging seeing Anne Romano with a steady boyfriend. Because it was about a very independent single woman and single mom. So when that wasn't working out, I was kind of thinking, well, they're probably going to write me out too, because, you know, this is a whole storyline that they're just going to shift and change because the whole relationship thing wasn't working. But then CBS said, no, keep the kid. It's about a single mom, just like everything you're saying, John. CBS came back and said, no, you have to somehow get out of the relationship, but keep the kid. So season 7 opened with a show called Alex Moves In. And the season opened with Ron already had passed away over hiatus, Nick Handress. And Bonnie was kind of dealing with that. Anne Romano was dealing with the grief of losing her boyfriend. And then they got a phone call saying that I had run away from my birth mom. And where did I run away to? But I ran away to Barbara and Ann. And I just begged to live there. And my mom, who was very neglectful of Alex, basically gave them, you know, the rights to raise me. So that's how it all happened. And yes, so then I became the big pain in the butt, like Julie used to be, doing all kinds of things. In fact, Mackenzie and I talk about this all the time. It was kind of like there was only 2 people on the show that Bonnie slapped, and one of them was me, the other was Mackenzie.
That is awesome.
What a badge of honor.
Exactly. What a moment. Hey,
kind of liked it.
We're not going there. We're not going.
Oh no, I want to go there with Anne Romano, the dominatrix. There's got to be a subplot there somewhere.
Oh my!
There was another episode where she spanked me with a paddle.
Oh
what am I saying? There we go. Come on.
You're on to something there, Bob.
We have taken a dark turn on That's Classic. No. Okay.
Well, they did a remake. They can do another one.
They can do anything now. Okay.
Anybody
so here's the other thing. I'm looking through One Day at a Time. I could not believe the guest stars that were on this show. I mean, it was not little bits. I mean, I saw Keenan Wynn, Suzanne Summers, Jay Leno, Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill.
Who was on there that you were like, oh my God, this is wild?
So everyone always asks me who is my favorite guest star. Without a beat, I say Van Johnson.
How cool! Wow. Was he on with Nanette Fabray? Was there a storyline there?
Yes, it was, and he was kind of a shifty, like he was kind of taking her for a ride. Let's put it that way. So he played a sleazy kind of character, but hilarious and wonderful. And so like I started begging to be an actor when I was about 5 years old.
Yeah.
And I would beg my parents, please, I want to be an actor. They said, oh, that's nice when you get older. You know, that would be a good. I'm like, no, I want to do it right now. So I wore them down when I was about 8. And that's when I actually became an actor because I always loved it. And I loved old MGM musicals.
Oh, yeah.
Like I was so influenced by all the history of show business that came before me. And like a lot of kids my age at the time never knew who the hell Van Johnson was. Like, you know, they would have never known. But when I got that script and it said next week and it had the cast lineup and it said Van Johnson, I almost crapped my pants. Like, I was so excited.
Yeah.
And the first thing I asked him, I said, do you have your red socks on? And he picked up
that's so
his
cool.
pants and he had his red socks on. Yeah.
He must have been just delighted that a youngster was a fan of his to that point.
I think so. I mean, I certainly knew a lot about that sort of thing, you know, and I pride myself in that. Like I think one of the things that we miss today is, you know, the industry got so dispersed. There's so many different ways to get your programming right now that it's hard to focus on even what's out there, let alone the history of what got us here. So I always encourage younger people to like watch the old TV shows, watch the Dick Van Dyke Show, watch the Carol Burnett Show, watch the Mary Tyler Moore Show, watch our show. Like know where this led, because we all grew up in a time that was pretty special, you know.
Very much so.
You know, we grew up with 3 networks. We had, you know, like TV was the campfire of our families. You know, like we all watched stuff together, like the Mutual of Omaha, Animal Kingdom on Sunday nights.
Marlon
like that
Perkins.
And followed by Wonderful World of Disney.
Oh, you
Wonderful
got it.
World of Disney. Yes,
love that time.
Yes, so like we all had an experience that we shared. We all watched TV at the same time, which was very special and different. Like the next day. By
the way, if you missed it, you missed it.
Exactly.
You might see a rerun, but we didn't have VCRs.
We did not. And I got to tell you, they used to pay a lot more for those summer reruns on network television.
Oh, are you talking about?
I'm sure.
Do you remember those residuals? I mean, you know, now they just replace it with a new series, so they don't even have reruns on networks anymore.
Right. No, it's a whole different world. But the experience as a society, as a country, like even the impact Norman made on our society through his shows. Yeah, and people watched them together and they discussed and they talked, but no one was being preached. They were just laughing along. So there was a sense of let's learn through laughter. Let's laugh at each other. I think one of the problems we have these days is everyone's so serious about everything. Nobody.
Bingo. Yep. Absolutely.
Like,
I agree 100%.
You know, it's changed in a way that isn't necessarily for the better, in my opinion. But you know, in some ways, for sure.
I had a conversation. I was blessed to have a conversation with Norman at the Emmys a few years ago at the Governor's Ball, and I said to him, you know, there was a time where we laughed not just at ourselves, but at our frailties, our differences, and similarities weren't called stereotypes. It was just we were laughing. Oh my God, that's my Italian mama. Or, oh my
Right.
God, that's my Jewish grandfather. Well, today, laughing at a similarity is considered a negative stereotype rather than just A, have a sense of humor, and also, hey, it's an homage to a loving relationship, memory, just similarity that, man, everyone's got a chip on their shoulder today. And Glenn, I could not agree with you more that those were better times because we were able to have a sense of humor.
Well, yeah. You look at all his programs. Look at all of Norman Lear's programs. They all, dealt with that. I mean, your show alone, if we went back and we looked at all the messages that were in that comedy, there's a lot. I mean, it's a funny show, but let's be honest, there's some serious stuff in there.
Oh yeah, well, Julie ran away early on, and that was huge because I remember watching that episode with my mom when she had run away with her boyfriend, and she says to Bonnie, "I want this, I want this, I want this, and if I don't get any of that, I'm not coming back." And Bonnie goes, "Okay, Julie, don't come back." Right. And my mom smacks my leg and goes, "Good for her." And I'm thinking, oh, that was like my first lesson in tough love. Yeah.
Wow. You keep your act together there, Bob. I think you're
which I did.
Tell you something.
I'd already told my Jewish mother I wanted to be Porky Pig.
He opened the door.
It was downhill from there.
I get it. Yeah, no, there was an episode that the whole series came out on DVD a few years ago, and so I got to binge watch the show like in the order it aired and like just in all of its entirety, not the chopped down syndicated versions and stuff. So it was really wild to like kind of sit back and watch it. It's like watching home movies, but it wasn't home movies, and just to kind of see the storylines. And there was this one episode, Harrington used to write about 3 or 4 episodes a year.
He did?
And he wrote this one called Schneider and Alex, which is the original name of it. It turned out to be called something else. Catcher in the Mud, I think, is the name if folks out there are looking it up. I believe it was season 7. Don't quote me on that, but I think so. And during the hiatus, he had called my parents and said, "Listen, I'm writing this episode, but I want Schneider's trying to teach Alex how to handle a gun. And I want to make sure it's okay with you guys if Glenn does this scene with me and he handles the gun," which just shows what a wonderful, ethical, incredible person Harrington was to even think to call my mother. I mean, I don't think, there would have been a lot of other people that might have even done that. So he called my folks and they said, of course. So I watched that scene not too long ago, and, it's about gun control, the whole scene. Schneider's teaching me how to handle a gun. Anne Romano walks in the door and I'm pointing it at her and she's like, "What?" And so she goes off on, she doesn't want me holding a gun. He's like, guns don't kill people, people kill people. It's all the conversation that they had is a conversation that's still going on in our country.
Yeah.
So,
crazy.
it was what Norman did was he didn't create situations, he reflected situations.
Right.
And that's how the situation comedy, and they used to call our show a dramedy also, not just a comedy. Yeah. Because I've never cried so much in any role I've ever played than that comedy.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Because every actor, it is an issue. It's either an issue or it's like, I can cry on a dime. What was your situation?
No, I mean, I can definitely cry during the scenes. The scenes were so well written. And when it comes to a scene where you have to cry, there has to be the right beats that lead up to it. So for me, those scenes were structured so beautifully that I had time to find it within the scene and then build up and then let it happen. So writing plays such a big role for an actor. They say theater is, the actor's medium, but television is the writer's medium. So it really is about, finding those beats, and Norman and his teams on all his shows were just so brilliant at finding those beats.
Wow. Let's go back because I know we'll forget otherwise. So just tell us about Pacino. Okay. I gotta know. I mean, yeah, you throw out any name like that on this show, it's like, I'm going to dive in there. I want to know what was it? What was Al like?
He was amazing.
Wait, are you on first name basis, Cato? Come on. what was Mr. Pacino like?
I actually got his autograph one time. I did. Yeah. So Al and I, pretty tight.
You go way back. He keeps telling me though, hey, tell John when he does his podcast, use the freaking ring light.
There you go. But did John listen? No.
No. Why should he listen to Al Pacino?
Oh my God.
So no, so no, so he was wonderful. Like honestly, the way I was saying about the Van Johnson, how excited they was. Talk about excited. Like Al Pacino was like it for me,
Was this your first Broadway show?
No, it was actually my second Broadway show.
Say who you were in with the first one, by the way. I'm sorry. Come on.
The first one was Golda with Anne Bancroft. And
I read that. I'm like, give me a break, Glenn. Seriously. Anne Bancroft, then we go to Al Pacino. What a life.
And then after Pacino,
which means you must have met Mel Brooks.
Yes. And in fact, I saw him when Norman's documentary, the Modern American Masters documentary came out. We all went to a screening of that, and we sat with Mel, and I hadn't seen him since I was a kid, so I had an opportunity, thanks to Norman, to kind of share that, I was in this play with Annie, and what a huge influence she was, which she was. Like I often thought throughout my career, honestly, to this day, just how professional and how disciplined she was as an actress, and fun, and yet down to earth, but also just disciplined. So I learned that so early on about how to stay focused and be disciplined in what you're doing and living in the moment and being in that moment and no distractions. Like she was such a wonderful teacher for all of that for me. Wow. So I got a chance to tell him, and he was like, kid, stop right there. I'm going to start crying. Please don't talk about this anymore.
Oh, wow.
So, he's still so affected by, of course, the loss of his beautiful lady. She was incredible. So to work with Anne Bancroft was wonderful. I got to know Golda Meir. She was certainly part of the play. She was part of the development of the play.
Wow.
I've shared this story before, but I'll share it with you, gentlemen, because it's very profound in my life. One of the things she said to me, and she has said this to many people, this is not just to me, but I happen to have heard it from her. She said, first of all, I played her son, and the girl that played her daughter, she was so close to us because she loved being with the kids. So we were invited to lunch, and it was like being with a grandma, really. And so getting to know Golda on that level was kind of very, very special. Yeah. And she said, be the person you want to spend the rest of your life with.
That's
cool.
That's pretty good. Yes. And so true and profound, So, did I understand that at 9 years old? Probably not. But I remembered it.
You remembered it. It's still heart's still in your head.
Yes. And I would carry that throughout my life with a 20-year-old filter, with a 30-year-old filter, with a 40-year-old filter, now at 56 with a 56-year-old filter. And it's so important to know that we are complete in and of ourselves. Like I'm in this wonderful relationship, but we don't live our lives where we complete each other. Like we don't buy into that. We're complete, but our union is strong, so that's the difference. And I think some of what we're taught in society these days is to seek our happiness outside of ourselves. And that is the illusion. And I think that's what Golda was really implying in her statement.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah. So we got Pacino. Did you two bond pretty tight? I mean, during Richard III,
Yeah, no, we really did. The audition was incredible. He actually took me downstairs. After I auditioned, this was my third callback. I finally got to meet Pacino, which forget about. I was so excited. He walked out into the waiting room and he said, "Who belongs to this one?" And my mom was like, "Me." And he goes, "I'd like to take him downstairs. I'm going to get a coffee. I'm going to buy him a Coke. I want to explain the play a little bit." Because remember, it was Shakespeare, and I'm 12. Like, what do I know? What do I know from iambic pentameter? Like, I just didn't know it. So he went downstairs. He goes, "So do you know what the scene is about?" And I said, "I don't have a clue."
Good for you.
I'm like, "I have no idea. I'm just reading words." He goes, "Okay, so let me tell you," because he saw something in me, which was very cool.
Yeah.
So he gave me a chance. So he explained he is the youngest of the three brothers, and my father is the king, and he dies, and I'm standing in the way of him being the king. So he has to kill me and my brother. And like he started to explain the whole thing, and I was like, oh, and then that's what this line means. oh, and then that's what this means. Like it all started to go.
Wow.
So I went back in the room, I read, and by the time we got back to Staten Island where I lived, in those days, no cell phones. I'm old. And this was 1979, I think we were on Broadway.
Cool.
So
yeah.
So I got home, the phone was ringing, I got the part.
Wow.
You know, we did 2 months out of town tryouts in Philadelphia. I got very close to Al during that. He was wonderful to me. Like he was really wonderful. And he's you know, he's an introvert. People don't realize actors can be introverts. Al Pacino is an introvert. Like it's not like he's ha cha cha, let's have conversations. But with me, he really did. I went to his 40th birthday party. We were in Philadelphia when he turned 40, and he just like kind of the whole night sat with me and talked to me about his childhood and about his grandmother raising him and like all these things that he doesn't normally share. So I think we did have a certain bond that I'm so grateful for. And he was such a huge influence of why I became an actor, really. Like The Godfather, I'm an Italian from New York. Come on.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
So The Godfather played a big role. I'm like, I want to do that. How do you do that? That's what I want to do. So he played such a huge role.
That's pretty cool. So who was the next play that you did that you also worked with?
Oh, well, that was actually a feature film with it was a Peter Bogdonavich film, and it was starred Audrey Hepburn.
And it was they laughed. They all laughed.
They all laughed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
So that was really incredible. And Audrey and I got very close. She was so wonderful and down to earth. She's another one who set such an example. So like I never studied acting. You know, I would take classes as I got older just to kind of keep the muscles, you know, like you do it when you go to the gym, you keep the muscles going in those times when you're not working. But I never really took acting classes as a kid because I was just shown by the best, you know?
Well, also,
you know,
I mean, you talk about iconic. I mean, Audrey Hepburn kind of goes even above like film star. I mean, there's something that like angelic going on there. I don't know with Audrey Hepburn. So what any you know, anything you can tell us about being on the set with her? I mean, I know Ben Gazzaro is in that, and
John Ritter.
Yeah.
John Ritter was one of the stars of that.
Dorothy Stratten is in that one too. I remember that. Well, let's stick with Audrey for a second. Tell us like what was that like with her?
Audrey Hepburn was just such an incredible woman. In addition to being an actress, she really did kind of, you know, like you were saying, John, you know, exceeded just stardom. She did something. She touched our planet in a very special way. Her spirit, her sense, I think, was important for all of us to get to know. And I'm so grateful I got to know her the way I did. You know, there was this whole sequence on Fifth Avenue that Peter Bogdonavich shot with hidden cameras. He didn't want to close the streets. He didn't want to get extras. Like it was literally this whole thing where she and I are walking from 30 Rock up to the Plaza Hotel. And we're walking up Fifth and she's just holding my hand. And there's all these little sequences. And there was also a corresponding sequence going on with Ben Gazzara and John Ritter on Fifth Avenue. So it took about a week to shoot that whole sequence.
Wow.
And they would have us walking on the streets, holding hands, and then they'd whisk us away into these shops because there was no room for, you know, Star Wagons or none of that. Everybody was just set up at the Plaza Hotel. So she told my mother, she goes, while we're shooting this, I'm going to keep an eye on him. Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on him. So she was also like my babysitter and guardian really throughout that whole week, especially. So we would get whisked into these stores and she'd say, okay, now sit here next to me, dear. And, you know, so I would sit with her. And there was this one store we went into, which was kind of like a music store and bookstore. And it was all these different classical tapes. And she asked me if I liked classical music. And I said, you know, I'm not really too familiar with classical music, you know, and she's like, well, let me share with you. And she shared with me her inspiration of liking Bach and Brahms and all this stuff and history, and really educated me on that. And then at the wrap party, she actually gave me those cassettes. I didn't see her buy them, but she bought them behind my back or had someone buy them. And that's what she gave me as our wrap party gift. Because I wanted to make sure. I know, it was very cool. So that's the kind of woman she was. She was so down to, she knew people's names. She knew the guy that brought the coffee. She knew, like, she was such an example for me on how to be a mega star and also be beautiful as a person.
And gracious.
That's so
Very,
cool.
And you know
very
what?
gracious.
She did not work that often. So to get a chance to work with her is such a blessing.
Yeah,
Oh,
that was incredible. She loved Peter Bogdonavich. Her son Sean Ferrer was in the film also, and I think he was one of the producers. I think that's how Audrey got involved in the film in the first place. Of course, the movie Star 80 was about They All Laughed because of, like you said, Dorothy Stratten.
Right.
So I also got to know Dorothy well. What an angel she was. And there was also, I watched that relationship when she and Peter fell in love on that set. Like, it was palpable.
Oh,
and they had
that's wild.
Yeah, and they had so much love. And it was shocking when she went back to get her divorce that he killed her. Like, we were all, it put a darker cloud actually on that movie, that the movie deserved to be seen in a different light, and it wound up being seen through that filter. So yeah, but I was so thrilled to be a part of it. Oh my gosh.
That's pretty cool. Well, I mean, before we move on, Ben Gazzara, just because obviously he's another one that's been around forever, huge career. What was he like as a person?
Oh my God.
I've never talked to anybody that's worked with him.
Again, an introvert, you know, he wasn't exactly, you know, out there, like always up here, unless his character needed to be. But wonderful and sweet and centered. I learned a lot from Ben. One time, so do you remember the movie Ben that was about the rats? Remember that had come out? So we're shooting at this Chinese restaurant overnight, and we're in the basement of this Chinese restaurant, and this rat comes, New York sized rat comes across the floor, and he's taking a nap on a cot down there, right? And this rat, and I'm like, Ben! And I'm screaming Ben about the rat, and he jumps up like, what the rat? Like, he thought I was screaming for him. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, Ben, I meant Ben the rat. And he looked like, what the fuck are you talking about? The Ben the rat, what? You know what hell I'm talking about. I'm like, the Michael Jackson song, like, but no, but he was so sweet to me, really. That movie, we brought Peter out. Of course, we lost Peter last year too, but I brought Peter out to Sedona, Arizona, where I live. I work very often with the Sedona International Film Festival. I own a TV station in Sedona, so I work with all of the events and such out there as sponsor. But I got to bring Peter out, and we actually screened They All Laugh on a big screen at the Sedona Performing Arts Center. And then I got to do the Q&A with Peter, moderate the Q&A.
How cool.
Yes.
Incredible.
It was so fun to see that in a big screen again, too, because remember, I hadn't seen that movie since it was released in 1980.
Right.
So hence the film Star 80. But so it was really cool to see, and to be with him again was really very special.
So are you living in Sedona now?
Yeah, so I've been there 30 years, Bob.
I knew you had your TV station, but I wasn't sure whether it was like a back and forth sort of thing, or if that's full. By the way, I've never been to Sedona. I hear it's fantastic.
You have to come for sure. Both you boys have to come for sure. Yeah,
God.
it's incredible. So no, I am back and forth. I'm talking to you today from Glendale, California, my boyfriend John Ritchie's beautiful place here.
You mean condo. the producer of $100,000 Pyramid, John Ritchie?
That's the one.
Wow.
And Hollywood Museum Squares, buddy. That's how I met him.
I know.
We worked together.
By the way, that was an incredible story too about John, that was his dream to be a game show producer, and he freaking did it. I mean, that's amazing in itself.
John is to game shows what I am to cartoons, because if you look at John's Facebook, every once in a while you see a picture of him at 6 months old with a Gene Rayburn microphone.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. I love that story. Love that.
Well, live in your passion. And I got to share a story that he told me last night for you, Bob. And that was when we were doing Hollywood Museum Squares, we shared it with some folks that are younger than us, that don't necessarily remember the first Hollywood Squares, believe it or not. I can't even believe people don't know the Hollywood Squares. But anyway, generations, of course, didn't know it. And so we're showing them, and you did your Porky Pig on the air, and one of the guys said, "Wow, he's pretty. That sounded pretty good. You know, that
Oh,
sounded
jeez.
pretty good." And we were like, yeah, it should, because he's actually Porky Pig.
But I hope that guy
Like-
goes into casting.
Exactly. Oh, my
Exactly, or at least development.
By the way, Glenn, I wanted to tell you, I did the last episode of One Day at a Time. It was
what?
It was a pilot for Schneider,
Yes.
and I did it with a high school. I didn't do it with him, but I went to high school with Robbie Rist. You got to know who Robbie Rist is.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. We're still friends. Yeah.
Exactly. So it was at Universal. Well, of course you knew that. And they parked us across Barham and made us take a bus over to 43, 44, whatever the stage was.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm sitting across from Robbie, and I hadn't seen Robbie in, I guess, about a year or two, or maybe a little bit longer. And we both looked a little bit different. And he looks at me and he goes, "Bob?" I said, "Robbie?" I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "One Day at a Time." I said, "Oh, me too." And Corey Feldman was also on it.
What?
And yeah, and it was okay. So I knew Pat from voiceover, because Pat was Inspector Clouseau in the Pink Panther cartoons. He was the Vlasic Pickles stork.
Vlasic. I was
totally,
gonna say,
totally.
yes,
Yeah.
Vlasic Pickle.
So I knew
yeah.
him from voiceover, and I knew his son Michael. I knew him from voiceover. But so I came up to Pat and I said, "Listen, I'm delighted to be here. This is so exciting." And he goes, "Don't get too excited. It's really not that good." I went, "Oh, okay, but I'm still excited to be here." And on the other side of the stage was Anne Romano's living room, her apartment. So they actually used one side for his new set, and the other side was hers. And I just walked on that other side of the set, and I just laid down on her couch. I just thought, this is cool. I'm laying down on Anne Romano's couch. This is just so bitchin'.
Wow.
Well, it could either be considered cool or creepy.
Can I tell you what creepy? Can I tell you what creepy? So when I was house hunting for this particular house,
Oh, God.
I was in Studio City, and my realtor shows me this house, and I said, "It's a cute house, but whoever owns this house is a real big Bonnie Franklin fan, because Jesus, look at all the pictures of Bonnie's house."
That's crazy.
Wow, that's weird.
Yeah, and I didn't know it, and they couldn't tell me at the time, because it's like you're not supposed to tell that sort. Well, I'm like,
Right.
And then when I found out, I'm like, well, then why didn't she take the pictures down if she didn't want anyone to know? I just thought it was a creepy fan.
Wait, this would tell me you were going to buy the house?
I was just house hunting. I didn't buy
house
it.
hunting.
I was just house hunting. My realtor showed me that house
Right.
somewhere in Studio City, and I'm in Woodland Hills, so I didn't stick around there. But
So what year? Do you know what year that was roughly?
in the late '90s.
Oh, in the late 90s. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Interesting. Because she, like, the house that she had from the days of One Day at a Time, she actually kept till the day she died.
Oh, is that right?
So
Wow.
yeah, so that might have been a different house, or a second, or maybe she was gonna sell it and then wound up not doing it.
Maybe.
I don't know. Yeah. Interesting. Because they did
Wow.
sell it, of course, when we lost her in 2012. So yeah, or 2013.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey,
That's crazy.
I know,
that
right?
is- that is crazy. It's wild, the tie-in there that you were in the last episode. I was like, what, Bob? Come on.
Well,
You always
okay, so
surprise
that was also during my tour guide days at Universal, and I mean, Embassy was very good to me when I did on camera back in the old days. I did Facts of Life, I did Silver Spoons, I did One Day at a Time, and it was this. I played Ding Dong Ditch to John Houseman's dressing room. You know what Ding Dong Ditch is?
Oh, I know it. Yeah.
It's when you knock on the door and run.
You run.
And he comes out in his little brown suit, and he looks around, and he closes the door. And we did it again, and he looks outside, and we did it a third time, and who's fucking with my dressing room?
Oh my God, John.
And I just thought I could die happy now that I heard John Houseman swear.
Oh, that's really funny. That's really
That
funny.
is so cool. I love it.
I love that kind of stuff. Hey, Glenn, taking a whole nother turn here, there was a small thing that I saw that I was like, what, like how many incredible people can you work with? You know, I mean, you are such a blessed guy. I can't believe it. I saw you did a pilot with Ethel Merman. Ethel Merman? What? How did that one get pulled out? What?
That's right.
I'm surprised Ethel Merman did a pilot.
I am too. I didn't even know. I'm like,
right? What? CBS, and they didn't pick it up. It was so crazy. It was Ethel Merman and Austin Pendleton, and Chris Barnes was the young boy. I played his friend. Wow. And yeah, it was really, I thought a really good show. We shot that in New York at the old CBS studios in New York City. And it was really incredible. She actually treated me to my first Broadway show ever, because she said, we were sitting around doing the scene, and she said, "So kid, did you ever see a Broadway show?" And I was like, wow. And that's not a great Ethel Merman impersonation.
That's pretty good.
No, I'm gonna give it a 7, but I don't really want to be specific. Go ahead.
Wow, John gave me a 7.
I thought it was between 8 and 9 myself.
Wow!
And I'm a boys guy.
And you're a boys guy. I'm
That's
very,
right.
very. I'm honored. I'm very honored.
Oh God.
So, okay, did you ever see a Broadway show? And I was like, no, I haven't, Miss Merman. And so she said, "Where's your mother?" And I said, "Up there." She goes, "Tonight, he's seeing a Broadway show. It's on me. Whatever you want." So we wound up seeing Shenandoah with John Hurt, and it was amazing. And that was my first introduction to Broadway. It was before I even got on Broadway. Wow. So I got to see my first Broadway show thanks to Ethel Merman, which was just amazing.
And walking in the theater with her, was it like the world going, "Oh my God"?
Yeah. Well, she just paid for it. She didn't go with us.
Oh, she didn't go with you.
Oh, no. I thought she took you. Okay.
Oh, okay. No. Right. She made it happen. She made it happen. She said, "Whatever show you want, I'll get you in." So she did. Queen. And yeah, I mean, my gosh, and it was so wonderful. And then I flew back. I was flying back to do One Day at a Time one time, and we were in first class in American Airlines. We were flying to LA, and who's on the plane but Ethel Merman? Wow. Who I used to like to call the Merm. And so Merm was on the plane, and she was doing an album called Merman Sings Disco.
The disco album?
Oh, God.
Yes.
Oh, my God. I know about that. I think I actually own that album.
Yes. In fact, it wasn't way before I got on One Day at a Time. I was doing one of the pilots that I did, because I did a few pilots before One Day at a Time, where I met Valerie. That was one of them. So it was during that era. And she was doing that, and she wound up sending me one of the albums that Merman Sings Disco. And wow. So it was really great to reconnect with her after that time. But yeah, no, I mean, I worked with some incredible people. I'm always so grateful for that. Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things that, I'll be honest with you, like, I left acting at 19. Once Jennifer Slept Here went off the air, I also did an episode of a show called Amazing Stories, which that episode was directed by Martin Scorsese.
Yeah. Come on, Glenn. Seriously.
And so you decided to give up acting.
Yeah.
Scorsese, Al Pacino.
I'm going to walk away right now.
Yeah. I've done it all. There's nothing else to do.
No, it wasn't that I had nothing else to do. The truth was, I knew I was gay, and I didn't want to play the roles that you had to play inauthentically. And I look at my life now, and in retrospect, I chose love over career. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't have regrets for it. I was able to, I saved my life in a lot of ways, and show business saved my life. I'll get into that. But I met this wonderful man named Gary, who was a theatrical manager. And I moved to New York. In fact, Marty made a phone call for me at NYU while I was on the set of the show. I was explaining that I was getting a little disillusioned with acting, and he goes, "You should just go to college. You should go to NYU film school. You should learn film. That's what you need to do." I'm like, okay. I'm like, it's a little late in the season. He goes, "No, I'll make a phone call." So he made a phone call for me, and I got into NYU. I had done well on my SATs, so that part was helpful. So anyway, I moved to New York, and then a year into our relationship, I wanted to get tested for HIV/AIDS because we were monogamous. And what saved my life, we wound up getting tested. He came back positive. I came back negative. Mm-hmm. So, but what saved my life really was being in show business, because I didn't live a sheltered life. Like, I didn't live a life where I didn't know gay people, or I didn't know gay people that died. Like, the first person I ever knew that died, it was still called the gay cancer in those days. Yeah. And I had never been with a man, but I certainly knew I was gonna be. Mm-hmm. So I just paid very close attention on what to do, what not to do, so on and so forth. So you know, I was Gary's caretaker to the day he died. He died at 36 years old. I was only 26 at the time. He was 10 years older than I. And that shifted my life. It changed my life. That's when I went on a spiritual walkabout and I found Sedona, Arizona. So, I mean, that's really, my life took on a whole different sense. Losing him so young and being the one to like feel his last heartbeat showed me what is important in life. Like,
and you chronicled that, because I saw a clip on your Facebook page that was just, buddy, it's amazing. It's amazing that you chronicled it. It's also amazing that you're sharing it. So man, and I do believe everything happens for a reason. You know, I know that's kind of woo-woo, but I don't care. You know, you went through the acting thing, and you met the love of your life, and you got to go to school. I mean, my God, the richness that this person brought to you, and you to him.
Yes. And honestly, and thank you for watching that and for knowing about it. That was a big deal to do that. It was very cathartic. I did that many moons ago. It was like 20 years ago, but I had never shared it on my social media up until when I shared it that day, which was his 30th anniversary of his passing. So, you know, my whole life had taken a whole nother, you know, direction, which was right for me. You know, like I love my life. Like, I created the perfect life for me. It wasn't necessarily that I dislike acting, or still I love it. It's just not who I am. It's part of what I do. You know, so when I had the opportunity to open a TV station, I host a lot of stuff. I do tons of interviews. I now do these morning show segments on ABC stations, script-owned ABC stations around the country.
The travel segments?
Yeah, the travel segments. Yes, cool. Traveler TV is what it's called, and that's my brand that I own. So, you know, it's just, it's wonderful. So I created a different kind of life. But meeting John at this age, in our 50s, you know, was interesting because we didn't have the whole history together. But one of the big things that brought us together was he was also caretaker to his first husband. I say husband because we weren't allowed to be married back then. And he died of cancer, not of AIDS. He died of cancer, but we had that together. Scotty died at 38. My Gary died at 36. So when you watch someone that young go, and you're the one that is like holding their hand through it all, it changes you. Like it was like one of my defining moments was, you know, assisting Gary through his death. Like it's one of the things I'm most proud of, you know, quitting smoking and Gary's death, and like all these things come way before debuting on Broadway, or, you know, knowing Audrey Hepburn. I mean, those things are in their proper place, but it's these other meaningful things that define the person you're talking to right now. So, you know, Johnny and I had something really deep in common, because when we go through any kind of trauma, any of us, we see the rest of our lives through those lenses. You know, we see it through the lens of our trauma. And that was such a big deal, you know? And I got to don't sweat the small stuff. Like that gift right there is so huge, because probably it's like, you know, the biggest. Because in this world, and even with everything that's going on in the world, like I can disconnect pretty easily. I can go without watching news. It's all going to be whatever it is. I know the part I could play, but I don't get all wrapped up in the drama. Honestly.
Do you you know, when you did get to Sedona, then how was it that you were like, you know what, I want to go back, but I want to own a TV station now? Like that.
Well, that was crazy. That was really crazy. So I moved. I had this relationship with Sedona through the 90s, where I would live in Sedona, then I'd live in LA, then I'd live in Sedona, then I'd live in LA, and I kept moving back and forth. And I was just like, okay, the third time I moved there, I said, okay, universe, third time's got to be a charm. I got to find my place here. Because I had moved here, and I moved back to Los Angeles in the 90s, and I opened a music business digital mastering facility.
That's when we met. That's when we were friends. Yeah. Not that we're not friends now, but I mean,
no, not that we're not friends now, but that's right, John.
That's right.
That was our connection, right? GKS Entertainment was the name of it. And so I did that. So then after I sold that, I moved back to Sedona, saying, okay, because I really wanted to live in Sedona. Like, you know, it's just the opportunities were different. It's a small town. 10,000 people live in Sedona still, and almost 4 million people visit every year. Just to put
Wow.
that
God,
on
I
the
thought it
record.
was so much bigger than that. I had no
No.
idea.
10,000 homes, and it's honestly, they're most of them are second homes, so it's not even everybody's living there at the same time. So I live in a pretty small town, so that was like, okay, what am I going to do here? So finally, I moved back. I had a little chunk of change in my pocket from selling the business, so I was going to buy a house. But before I bought a house, I rented just to kind of see what's out there and just plant for a little bit. And I got cable. This was 1999, I guess, 2000, and I didn't get channel 18. Out of 35 channels, I got 35 whole channels, and channel 18 was a blue screen. So I just called customer service, regular maintenance customer service, and I just said, hey, look, I think you're gonna need to maybe send someone to my house, and maybe a maintenance person, because I'm only getting. And they said, is that channel 18 you're not getting? I said, yes. They said, oh, well, that's available. Would you like to make an offer? And I was like,
what?
Exactly.
Get out of here.
Oh,
From
come
having
on.
From having trouble with your cable, you
what?
own a station?
Who says that? Hey, you want to buy it?
Well, this is why I believe in when you listen to the universe, and when you ask for stuff, you have to listen to when it actually comes your way. So I was like, oh, you mean like to own my own television station? So let me explain. In that market at that moment, because of course it's changed over the years, but in that moment, it was the only cable provider. There were you can't get antenna television in Sedona because of the mountains. And it was, there was no dish. So literally this cable provider was it. So if I got channel 18, everyone is seeing it. Like it's the real deal in that area. So I was like, okay. So, I had put some of my own bread into starting the station. I also got some investment money and so on and so forth. And I made it happen. And that was 20 years ago this year. We went on the air.
Wait. The customer service person says, hey, you want to buy it.
By the way, did you give the customer service person at least a vice presidency?
I mean,
that would have been nice. That would have been very Anne Bancroft of me.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. Yeah, I should have thought of that. No, I did not do that. But yeah, so that's the story, and the rest is history. So I've had the station. I love it. You were talking about Universal Studios. I did my school on the backlot of Universal for many years. I with Jason Bateman and Ricky Schroeder. I did it with Kim Fields and Nancy McKeon. We're right next in the next classroom, and so on and so forth. And I just heard from Kim last night. She texted me. She was going to do the Women's Expo in Phoenix. And she's like, hey, I think I'm in your stratosphere. I just want you to know I'm in Arizona. I'm like, I'm not in Arizona. I'm in LA right now. So we missed each other on that one. But yeah, I've made a life there, and I love it. I really love it. Sedona is very special. It really is. We want
to make plans to visit, because it's a place that I've always heard is magical. Yeah. And we discuss about getting out of Dodge, leaving LA, and where do we go next? With COVID now, I do every cartoon in my home studio, so I can live anywhere. So
wow,
something that we're talking about just to check it out.
Well, it's worth checking out. I do so much of my life this way now too. Right. When I'm in Sedona, I do my physical, like on the set, on location segments. But then on all the morning shows, I literally sit like this. I book. Sometimes I have a green screen behind me, but I book my time with all these different hosts, and I throw to the package, and like they'll be like, Glenn, where are you taking to us today? Like, because I'm seeing in Phoenix, Tucson, San Diego, Las Vegas, Denver, Santa Barbara, and I'll be sitting there with all the different hosts and do the same thing over and over again, throw into the package. And that's my life. Like I can't. The pandemic offered this. Like it was. This was never. I couldn't do what I'm doing.
Well said. It offered it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a bright shining light through everything. Absolutely everything.
The COVID silver linings. I mean, COVID sucked. We can't deny that. But if you're an actor, first of all, if you're a voice actor, we kept going when everybody else stopped. What you're able to now do with a little bit of a shift in technology and what, but the fact that we can keep doing it it actually opened doors that we never knew were closed to begin with.
That's right.
I agree. Yeah, you're right. Okay, I've got one last one or so, because I know we've had you here this whole time, but here's the other one I saw. Well, first of all, you had the teen idol image, and I understand all that, but then which I would like to hear about that whole experience, but also you released an album. I was like, wow, did you always sing? I mean, honestly, I'm just curious. Was that like a natural, like, oh yeah, hand me a mic?
Yeah, I mean, I always loved singing, you know. I did some musical theater. I did Pippin and Peter Pan, and I did one Broadway show when I was a kid called Street Heat that really didn't make it, but Vicki Lewis was the star with me in that one, and it was a musical. So I loved singing. I always loved singing, and two incredible things came out of just being that whole teen magazine thing. One of them was the album on CBS Records. I had such an incredible experience, not only doing it, but I was on American Bandstand. I got to do that with Dick Clark, which was very, very cool. We just found an old VHS. Mom sent John and I a box of VHSs. It's on there. So one of these days I will be sharing that on my social media. It's incredible. So that was special. I had my own float at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade where I sang my song. So
wow,
you know, those were just incredible experiences. And then
were those the days of the skin tight satin pants and the rolled up sleeves, lots of hair?
Maybe.
Yeah, there we go. Not that I ever saw any of that. Not that I was a listener of that stuff. Just kind of curious to see what your reaction was.
Yeah, I used to
do it for the fans.
Right.
Yeah, my goal with my pants was always I want to wear them tight enough so they could see my religion.
And then you go, I didn't know he's not Jewish. Okay, great.
He's not Jewish.
Oh my God.
No,
wow.
So that was incredible. And then the other thing that came out of the whole teen thing was my dad was an Archie cartoonist for 47 years.
Yes,
that's the cool. That is so. I mean, I learned that from your social media too. I never knew that. Did he create the Archies?
No, he didn't create it, but he learned how to draw it from the guy who created it. So he was like the first, one of the first rounds of illustrators for Archie.
Cool. And do you have art? Do you have original art from his?
Yes, I do. In fact, when I went back, Johnny and I just recently took each other home for our going back on our home tour. Yeah,
you guys did.
The home tour. We met each other's families. Big deal. Yeah. And we grabbed some more of my dad's artwork and we shipped a whole bunch of stuff. And he had so many wonderful friends that were artists that he also had their work hanging up in his office. So I got a chance. Mom gave that all to me this trip, and I was able to ship it to myself. So it's really beautiful. But one of the things I was just about to say was because of the teen stuff, they invited me to be in the cartoon and
I was just going to ask you about that.
So so Dad and I got a chance to collaborate on, and they called it Glenn Scarpelli in Hollywood, but I was on the cover of Archie with the Archie gang and that whole thing. So those two experiences, the album and the Archie era, were so incredibly fulfilling and wonderful. And I look back now with, you know, I have so many great memories and memorabilia from it. You know,
cool.
Special.
What was that like, just to be with your dad? You know, like it's like this is your dad's thing, and now he's drawing you, you know, with Veronica and Betty and the whole bit. What was that like?
Well, one of the other very famous artists there was Dan DiCarlo, who I loved, who was a dear friend of my dad's. And when the first issue of the magazine, of the comic book that I was going to be in, Dan drew me on the cover, and I was so excited. And my dad was like, "Wait a minute, you're all excited that Dan's drawing you?" Like, what's that all about? Like, all of a sudden, ooh, Dan DiCarlo's drawing you, really? Like, he was like that. So my dad was pretty funny. But I was excited Dan drew me. But yeah, so, you know, working with Dad, collaborating. I mean, I remember as a kid, before I was in show business, I sat on his lap and watched him draw, and he would put like paper over it so I could, you know, kind of draw over his stuff just to learn how to draw. I didn't really have that gene. I wasn't born with a great drawing gene. I'm okay, but nothing like him. He's a genius. And but I had a dad when I was begging to be an actor. Let me tell you, I did not have a dad that said, go get a real job. Okay. Yeah. I had someone that was creative, lived in his creativity, followed his passion, just like Johnny did. You're mentioning, you know, as a kid wanting to do, he always wanted to draw. My dad always wanted to be a cartoonist and then actually became one. So, you know, and a successful one.
Right.
So I had him as a role model, and he was so supportive of me being an actor. Like, he loved the fact that I wanted to live a creative life. And he used to take me to movies, probably movies I shouldn't have seen even that young, but he used to teach me how, well, it's all fake, but if you could think it, you could make it. He used
Love
to
it.
If you could think it, you could make it.
That's
so that
rare.
was his. And thoughts do become things, just even in our own world, you know, thoughts become things. So I think he was a great teacher of that.
Well, he lived his life with passion, and he passed that love of passion and excitement on to you, which, you know, I think, you know, no matter what a kid wants to do, you know, a parent has to support that passion and that excitement for whatever that it is. And bless your heart for having that, my friend.
That's so cool, Glenn. Glenn, thanks a lot for being on. I mean, honestly, I know Bob probably feels the same way. We could talk to you for another hour. I mean, it's just so fun, and there's so many things to talk to you about. But I don't want to take up any more of your time. But thank you so much for sharing your time with us and your heart. Just really appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys. You guys do such a great job on the show, and I was so thrilled that you invited me, and I appreciate you both so much. I had so much fun.
Cool.
All right. Appreciate you.
My friend.
Bye-bye.
Go ahead and hit the subscribe button in the corner of the video and the notification bell so you can be notified when I release my next episode. Enjoy.